Hi guys, this is Reema Tendulkar and welcome to Tech at Work with cnbc.tv18.com, where we talk about the mega technological trends and innovations that are changing the face of business. We talk to the CXOs who think like disruptors and act like startups. In this show, we keep up with technology. Now, today's topic is about the revolution caused by technology in the financial operations. Now, artificial intelligence has been around for the last 6 decades, but it's largely flown under the radar. It's only in the recent years that there has been hectic activity in this field. Machine learning has become much more effective, especially in a supercharged form known as deep learning. It has led to dramatic gains in the core operations of finance. To talk about this, I have a very special guest, the CFO of an AI powerhouse, Amazon India. Welcoming Raghava Rao, the CFO of Amazon India. Raghav,
thank you, Reema. Thank you.
20 years experience, 7 cities, 3 countries. You've seen the transition from analog to digital. How has technology changed the role of a finance professional?
Hugely. I'll probably put it into 2 areas. First is finance processes on accounting, reconciliations, transaction processing, etc., which I would call as the backyard of what a CFO or a finance function does. So there are some changes that have happened there. The second part are the industry per se, in which that particular CFO or the industry, the business operates. That's undergone a huge change. Let me talk about the second first, and then I'll come back to the first. What's happening in the last decade and a half is technology is evolving, and the pace at which technology is evolving is accelerating much further than what it was before. So you have examples of companies like Kodak, which were probably giants in their era, which have now become, which have lost their prominence simply because they've been overtaken by new technologies in digital space, etc. So what's happening is there's massive computing power coming through. That computing power is available for companies at a very cheap price. Product life cycles in tech are shortening, and you can actually get huge amounts of data about your customer, and companies are then getting differentiated on how well they use the data to actually serve their customers. So tech is helping you with all of that, including artificial intelligence.
If you could elaborate a little more on how companies are using the key technologies to drive change in finance.
Yeah, let's take a typical example in the e-commerce industry, or it could even be in the restaurant or the fast food serving industry. In all of these industries, a certain percentage of your orders that you serve get rejected by customers. Yeah? And often the rejection is willful, it is intentional. Now that's a bad cost for the system, because what happens in e-commerce when the customer rejects the order at the doorstep, the product has traveled all the way forward to the customer's doorstep. The customer says, thank you, I've changed my mind, I don't want it for whatever reason, and the product then comes back. So you incur not only a huge amount of cost in logistics, but the product also suffers multiple handling and it gets damaged. Now, the problem is when a customer order is placed, how do you, for example, identify the probability that this particular order, as an example, is likely to get rejected, and in which case you serve the customer only the option of making a prepaid order, paying for the order in advance, as opposed to not giving a cash delivery as an option, because then the stickiness is much higher and the probability of rejection is low. So what we do is we use past data of customer rejections. We try to see if our computing systems can find a pattern in it, and we consider a huge number of variables, which could be all the way from a PIN code, a customer's name, the way the name has been spelt out, the address, and very often customers give incomplete or false addresses, the time of the day when the order has been placed, the manner in which the keyboard has been hit to type the address, we call it monkey typing in certain terminology, and then the product itself, the selling price of the order, whether the price was heavily discounted or not. And we use all of these to surface the probability, that's what the algorithm does, about whether the probability of rejection of this particular order for this particular customer who's opened a browsing session is a certain X%. And if the probability is more than a certain percentage, we actually then take away or give the customer an option to pay only using a debit card and a credit card, which sort of filters out genuine intent. And remember, all of this has to happen in the fraction of a second that the page loads, and therefore all this computation has to run at the back end. And if you get this wrong, you take away the option to pay in cash for a genuine customer, you're actually putting off a genuine new customer. So how well an organization does this and how your probability gets better can make a lot of difference to your business efficiencies. Let's say a customer has placed an order of a mobile phone, an iPhone, the latest model that has hit the market. Now you got inventory placed in Mumbai or somewhere and you got to serve a customer in Delhi. You have an option of serving the customer in, 3 days versus 1 day where you have to send the mobile phone over a flight, and it costs you more. Now, if you work through the maths, you would probably say, hey, you know what, let me serve the customer in 3 days and I'm okay with it. I make maybe 100 rupee more per transaction if I do so. But the fact is, even if you make 100 rupee less per transaction to serve the customer faster, your data will tell you that a customer who gets the mobile phone in just, 12 hours or 18 hours is absolutely delighted with that experience and is more likely to come back to the website in future and place more orders, and you're better off as an organization spending that 100 rupee more and delighting that customer because that increases the present value of your future cash flows.
And
so
this
example,
machine learning tells you?
This machine learning tells you because it looks at past patterns of orders placed and the circumstances in those orders were placed, and it points out what are you correlating with and what your future order stickiness is largely dependent on. And it will tell you, therefore, that the speed or the time taken to serve the order is very strongly correlated with future orders being placed.
What can it not do in the field of finance?
I think judgment. There's always a human or a leadership judgment that is involved in certain situations. And data can give you a probability of an error, but using your past gut instinct, your judgment is something where machines will keep getting better, but they will probably never hit the threshold of being able to replace a human leader's judgment about what is the right thing to do and what is not the right thing to do. I think that's something that AI will never be able to do.
How do you foresee the future of finance in a digital world? Picture yourself as the CFO for a company 5 years hence. What will you be doing differently compared to what you're doing today?
I think there's a fantastic quote that I once heard from a senior leader, which is something like this. The quote goes that leaders of the future will spend 50% of their time managing people, only 50%. The remaining half of their time they will actually spend managing machines. I think that quote is a beautiful visualization of what finance could be in the future. And the machines that 50% of your time will be spent on are not just robots, they're algorithms, they're massive technologies that crunch data to throw up decisions. You will keep auditing the policies or the data that is thrown up and make changes to those algorithms. But that, I think, is what the future of finance will look like, that people will have to get comfortable managing machines and algorithms.
And today, what percentage of a CFO's time is spent managing machines?
I think it's getting better and better, and it gets better in the tech industry versus the analog industry. Even in the traditional industry, a lot of time is spent in managing data. Typically, the CFO is responsible for MIS. What happens in a tech organization is MIS gets automated, custody of data is democratized in the organization. It's not just finance which owns the data. Every business leader owns that data with the same degree of control as you would do. But where finance starts coming in is being able to use the data to predict what is going to happen and then shift the organization's attention to drive the right actions, including resource allocations, so that you can use those predictions and get better. A simple example would be, if you look at whenever you run sales or promotion events, there is a certain pattern to how the sales spans out by the hour and by the minute. So typically, if you look at the number of hits, customer hits on your site per minute at maybe, 11 o'clock in the morning, you have a very good probability of accurately predicting what your sales is going to be for the full day. So if in a matter of hours, you can shift the organization's resources to do something that you may not want to do, you know exactly how you can optimize for perhaps the result that you're seeking to expect. So that's an example of being able to predict data, predict output using data, which is what finance would be doing.
How different is the role of a finance professional in a traditional industry like HUL versus that in an Amazon?
Yeah, let's take the case of business finance partnering. In a traditional industry, finance professionals spend a lot of their time on what I would call transaction economics. Put it very simply, transaction economics is when a single transaction takes place, which could be buying or selling a bar of soap or shampoo, you focus your attention on what you can do to maximize the selling price, eliminate the leakages, and minimize the costs so that the value created by that transaction goes up. And that the assumption is that multiplied by millions of transactions of customers buying and selling soap values the firm. In the tech industry, what you would look at is, of course, you would look at that particular transaction in place, but you look at what your future cash flows are going to be and how they're driven by that particular transaction, which meant that that particular transaction can still be cash negative. But if it leads to transactions which are cash positive in the future, because the customer comes back again and again because of more loyalty, that then optimizes for your future discounted cash flows. Those are the transactions on which you spend more time and attention. So that's a little bit of difference, that rather than spending time on transactions which improve your cash flow in the present, you take care of transactions which improve your future cash flows, and the net present value of those future cash flows is what you would optimize for.
We spoke about the future of finance, but if you could tell us the steps the CFO has to take to make the organization ready for the future in this digital age.
Yeah. Rima, I'd probably put it down in 3 areas where finance CFOs get their organization and teams ready for the future. First is making sure that your business model for the future is centered around the customer, and it makes maximum use of data that is generated to be able to serve customers better and improve the efficiency of serving that customer. That's area number 1. The second one is building tools and capability so that finance teams of the future can serve their customers much better. That's area number 2, and machine learning, deep learning, all of it gets in and gets into it. And how does a finance team sort of use that and get better? The third area is in culture, because finance teams of the future are going to use a lot of data. The culture of the finance team is going to be quite important. Culture as well as skills. I think when you use data, you got to be quick to take decisions. So bias for action is hugely important. You also need to be able to acknowledge that errors can happen, and also you need to reverse errors very quickly. So being vocally self-critical and not digging in your heels on a particular decision is hugely important. So that's another area that's fairly important. And of course, with technology changing, finance leaders need to be curious and keep learning constantly, because technology is going to be dynamic throughout. So that's the part about the culture readiness of the finance teams that's going to be important.
Can you throw some more light on what jobs in finance may look like?
Yeah, I said earlier that accounting jobs would get automated. Yeah, so basic debit and credit entry, posting using a journal voucher, which had a fairly manual component, would get completely automated. Data once captured will sit in the organization. Reconciliations will become largely automated. So that part of the work sort of gets dramatically simplified in future. I think what becomes more valuable is being able to look at these transactions and mine them for insights. If you look at a pattern of, I don't know, let's say travel claims being made across in your organization, being able to mine thousands of data and then say, hey, you know what? This particular pattern of travel, maybe going from the office to the airport, we are paying much higher than what we should be paying. And this is an opportunity where if you could save it, is resulting in a large saving, could result in a large potential saving, is an example where people will have to spend more of their time. Now, I gave you an example which is related to costs. Think of the similar example related to customers. And then the value creation possibility goes up hugely. As an example, if you could look at data for all your customer transactions in the past and identify that there are some what we would call high value actions that customers who buy so-and-so product, and it could be a Prime membership in the case of Amazon, come back to Amazon again and again, and that improves your future cash flows that you have with Amazon, then that focuses the organization's energies and effort to maximize those specific transactions, and then that increases your future cash flows and the overall valuation of the business that you're running.
Thank you very much.
Thank
with
you,
that,
Rima.
it's a wrap on this episode of Tech at Work. We'll be back with more.